And did you get to record twice?
Yes.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Walsh? Here. Mr. Groove?
Here.
Mrs. Drumming? Here. Mr. Reed?
Here.
Mr. Warner?
Here.
Mr. Kreutz?
Here.
And Mr. Moten is unable to be here today.
And to approve the item C, the agenda approval from August 10th.
We're adopting the meeting agenda, is that correct? For tonight?
Oh, I'm sorry, we'll approve the agenda for today, yes.
So moved.
Mr. Warner?
Yes.
Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Mrs. Walsh?
Yes.
Mr. Groove?
Yes.
Mr. Kreutz?
Yes.
Mrs. Drumming? Yes.
Okay, item D, one, approve the minutes from August 10th. Motion. And the motion to approve the agenda minutes from August 10th. And there's just one thing I was going to send you.
You have to have a second for
Oh.
the discussion, so I'll second that.
Thank you, Jack. And that is, it said a demographic study. I think you needed geographic.
Okay.
Yes. Did that one change?
I think it did, I think you said demographic in the meeting, though.
I also have demographic in my notes.
You know what?
I have demographic
Oh,
in my notes.
So we all understood demographic, but perhaps the intention was a geographic,
yeah,
I think.
for the area. I think I was listening to my reporting and it's hard to tell, so.
Okay, yeah, I had demographic as well, because if you recall, I questioned that wasn't part of the agenda, so.
Yeah, because community areas, you know, with the intention for it to be the areas, not, I mean, I guess we need both really, but we'll just leave it like that and then just add that on
Okay.
later. How's that? Yep.
We can, so are we putting that into the minutes, or would we like to add it as a discussion item on this approval?
Added from the discussion on the approval? Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
good. That sounds like a good way to do that.
Okay.
Sure.
Then you would just want to state that your intention was to have it be a geographic study.
Both.
Um,
Oh, it's both?
I think we need both, yeah. I mean, if we're gonna, my intention was that, you know, the demographic is good, but the geographic was my intention because we wanted to find out which areas the facilities may need support. Out, you know, like after hour support or whatever that are having problems.
So just kind of for the clear record, we're doing a demographic and geographic study of what?
Well, the geographic information is so that we can look at areas that of our community that might need additional support, maybe after hour support, that are having difficulties with discipline. Schools that are having discipline.
That's
Like if we
really
look
not-
at the report that we just got, we'll see that there are,
It's really not a function of the facilities advisory.
well, it is because the facility is the one that has to provide the support in the area, what part of the school will be used for that, what can the facility offer the community.
I don't see that within the purview of this committee, I guess, or concern. Based on the, what the board established as our scope of work, I don't see that would be within that scope.
Well, maybe we can look at that.
Or the board could decide that that's something that they want
And
to pursue.
I think it is because the facility needs to be designed in a way that has options to offer outside services, and they need to have those options, for the facility itself. So like, say if we're gonna be opening up the gym, what will we need to do security-wise for the facility so that they can do that and open that up to the community? Are we gonna have to have special entrances, requirements? There are things that would have to be followed, the facility would need to provide. I mean, the activity itself, yeah, that would be outside the scope of this group, but how the facility is being utilized and what it needs in order to provide that service, we would need to take care of that, make sure it has the right kind of entrance. I don't know, does that make sense?
Yeah,
Anybody
I think
else?
that's part of facilities planning.
That does make sense. I think the first step, or maybe some steps previous to that, would be something that would come out of teaching and learning, or maybe even out of the Office of Exceptional, is that
Exceptional students.
exceptional students that have, you know, the access to our social workers and those types of specialties that can find out what the need is and then work with this group as to how we satisfy that. That's what I think, that's the progression that makes sense in my head.
Well,
Yep, that makes sense.
I guess I would go back to a little bit what Jeff was saying, what the scope of this group is to do. So when it was established, outline key issues and make recommendations for deliberation by the board. Enable a good process of decision-making while saving the board valuable time. Responsible for providing guidance, oversight, and appropriate specialized expertise to the district administration in the following areas: long-range master facilities planning, capital renewal, capital projects, facility-related policies and procedures, operations and maintenance. At all times, considering recommendation and or options to the board, the committee members will serve. So, like a geographic and demographic study, are we talking about engaging or employing a company to do that?
No, I don't think so. I mean, we just need to know, we know what the students are in our area. But I think Chris is right that maybe it should go through teaching and learning, look at those, and then come back to us. I think Chris is right. I mean, we have discipline, we were looking at security for discipline and problems that were happening at the schools, fights and those kind of things. Well, we need to look at why those are happening. But yeah, maybe that would be
How does that
different
relate to
scope
the
out there.
facility, though? I mean,
So
Because
if
what
there
Mark's
are
just-
areas, my thing was if there are areas of the community that we know that are gonna need help with that, what can we do as, at the facility, maybe have an outdoor learning area, something for kids to come to after school or parents to get support, and how could the facility be used that way? Can it be used that way? We don't know, but which schools would need that kind of support to help with these problems? We definitely have areas.
I would think that all schools we need to ensure that all schools have that support, because we don't know, I mean, just because the school's in a certain area, programming may require students who are in another area for special needs or something like that. So I think we could almost make a global statement that all schools need to be able to support students that have disciplinary concerns. I don't know that you'd have to do a study into that. I think we should plan that. What do we need to provide? And what are those elements of a school that can accommodate programming? I don't think you necessarily have to do a study into what's the cause of freshmen being.
I would have to agree with you guys though on where this needs to go to the board. And we need to approve the minutes. And I don't think, we can look at that with the board.
Okay.
Are we ready for?
I think so, yeah. That was long for just that.
That's all right. That's clarity is always
So we're
helpful.
just approving the minutes at this point, correct?
Minutes with the additional notation of the discussion about a geographic as well as demographic. Mrs. Walsh?
Aye.
Mr. Warner?
Aye.
Mr. Drew?
Yes.
Mr. Reed? Mr. Kreutz?
Yes.
Mrs. Drummond? I'll say aye. Yes.
Then we have item 2, discussion of board policy 7410 meeting. I'll leave that to you guys, go through, kind of look into some things.
So, in looking at 7410, I don't feel like I need to read it, because you can probably read better than I can read aloud. But it seems like the gist of this is to ensure that the superintendent have the means to have the custodial maintenance staff perform certain annual duties. It outlined what those duties are. So what we've come up with is a list of duties that we know happen at least annually, if not more. I can go through those briefly. We have an annual building assessment with the fire marshal, every building. We have an annual inspection with the health department in regards to chemicals, MSD sheets, those types of things. We have a health department kitchen inspection twice a year. We do an annual walkthrough with building administration. All of our new roofs on our facilities get inspected annually by per the warranty. All of our roofs that are not new are inspected annually by Progressive Roofing. Our facade and pavement, we don't necessarily inspect, and the reason being is the vast majority of our buildings are brick. And we'll know there's a problem when we have essentially leaking on the inside of the building. Our facade, our pavement, that's something that we do. I think the district for the past 4 years has had a pretty good pavement plan. And that's something that we revisit every year, but that changes just based on wear and tear. We do a security inspection.
Chris, just a couple points of clarification. In the spring, we do physical building walkthroughs, walk the interior, exterior building.
Yeah.
And if there are leaking points or other concerns, that's brought to our attention before that, we physically go and look at the buildings. We also have a 5-year master plan for paving for blacktop and concrete. So, I mean, it's actually a little more official than even what you said.
Okay.
Those are addressed annually.
We have a security inspection every year. That's our alarms, horns, doors, fire doors, all those things. An annual sprinkler inspection. We also have an annual kitchen hood inspection and cleaning. Annually, we do a boiler and chiller inspection. That actually, I believe, is something that is required from our insurance company. And all of our HVAC preventive maintenance is done in-house or through Dynamics, which now is called Verity.
I'm sorry, I don't get you off kilter, but I think I missed one of the items.
That's it.
And what you said, annual sprinkler inspection and then annual boiler.
And yeah, there you go. In between is the kitchen hood cleaning and inspection.
Thank you.
So do we have a program that says, we will do kitchen inspections every March, April, whatever?
The majority of what I listed is per the state's inspector, whenever they want to show up. So let's say the fire marshal. They'll tell us when we're going to do it. The health inspector, same thing. They'll tell us when they want to do it. It's not necessarily something, we don't schedule with them. And even though we find that in a lot of cases, it's around the same time every year, these are inspections that they do on their schedule.
So we don't inspect them ourselves, we wait for the state to come and inspect them.
Well, we do it with them. We walk with all the inspectors.
They're actually staying, the inspectors have come out and Jeff goes with them.
So I noticed on the last sprinkler system, what was that, the fire and asbestos, they do this at the same time?
Asbestos, Jeff can talk more about as well.
The asbestos is a 6 month. We have a 6 month inspection that goes on. And then we have a 3 year, the 6 month is a
Are
designated.
you here for that meeting?
Okay,
Facility, that's a facility advisory committee.
I didn't invite you, I'll step out.
Oh, me.
All right, I got it. So, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
So the asbestos is a 6 month inspection that we do in-house as a designated asbestos person. We have 3 that can do that inspection. And then every 3 years, the company comes in and updates our books on what has been replaced, what has been damaged. All of that gets updated, and an outside company does that as far as the asbestos.
And then the fire alarm is inspected whenever the state comes in.
That is actually, well, that's part of the fire marshal, but we also have EPS that comes in and does annual inspections.
That's actually falls under the under fee because it's the equipment that they'll inspect. Our strobes, our bells, our pull stations, fire extinguishers, all that sort of thing. And it all gets overseen by the fire marshal when he comes. And usually they come right after school starts, but to his point, we never, it's not a set thing.
We get what, about a week notice, 2 weeks notice?
Yeah, I mean, and unfortunately for him, because he's Madison Township, he has all these warehouses. He has Canal Winchester schools as well as us. We have done 3 so far already this year. And October the 4th is our first schedule with the Board of Health. Usually takes me about 2 days with her to go through all the schools. Board of Health.
Yeah, and the report's pretty long. Do we go through these things before those organizations come in, or we just go with them? We just, I mean.
Well, we have
Until they come.
we have things in place, because we've been doing this for so many years now. We kind of know what to look for ourselves, and there are things in place that, I mean, I'd like to say guaranteed, but they don't happen all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But we
yeah.
kind of know what they look for. We know trouble spots, for instance, downtown with the electric, because there's not much electric in those 2 buildings. So extension cords, surge protectors, those kinds of things are more prevalent down there than they are in other buildings. But for the most part, exit
Exit
signs,
lights, those things
fire
are,
extinguishers, we do it all ahead. We clean the hoods ahead of their inspection. We try and get that all done through the summertime, and backflow preventers, all that kind of thing. We schedule all ahead of them so that when he comes, he doesn't have to write it up. It's already done.
So I guess if we had a program, these things are done, and the things that state inspected will be state inspected, or we can change the policy to not say have a program, have a schedule or whatever. I mean, if we say have a program, then we should have a program. If we're not gonna have a program, then we need to take that out of policy and make a decision one way or another. But I think we could have it and just say, put this and this, if something happens to John. We need them to come in and say, hey, this is when these things are done in the summertime. The state comes and takes care of these, and we do that when they come that's when we do it. I know, I was looking at the dynamic, that contract is probably something we should look at. It says they come in once a month, $5,930 a month to inspect some engineer support district-wide plan. I'm wondering how effective is it? Does that a good cost of money? Do we have a team that can do some of this stuff that they are now doing in support? They also come in and do another service. And both of these are getting ready to expire, though. You know,
Yeah.
well, if they're about a year out, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, for 3,200 a month, they inspect different things, and there's supposed to be a detailed report of each inspection, and make sure they're doing those things. And if you think this is effective, and the new in here might have some better plans.
Well, in regards to dynamics of Verigy, at my previous district, we didn't have the employee that we have here. So we got an HVAC specialist, expert here, specialist, that does a lot of work, a lot of preventive maintenance, but he can't do everything. So that's what that covers, is the rest of the stuff. I can say that at my previous district, there was no HVAC tech. So that preventive maintenance cost was hundreds of thousands a year. So I know that we're going to be looking at going back out to bid for that program, obviously before it terminates. But that is a especially with all the upgrades that the district made over COVID, that is or I should say that is a low cost for what we're getting out of it. Because of the specialty that they're able to spend up, or the different people they're able to send us with these different specialties, we'd have to hire 2-3 people to do that kind of stuff, which would far exceed that cost. Yeah.
So are we getting a monthly reporting on energy consumption and savings?
We are. I'd have to look at that because I know that I'm new. I'm not sure exactly where that's going, but I know they have it.
Well, I think it'd be a good idea that as part of the maintenance,
Sure.
you know, portion and committee, is that it says that there will be annual reports to the board. We've never had one. Maybe it'd be a good idea for a meeting to have
We've
one.
had them in the past. We may not have had them in the past couple
I've
of
been
years,
here,
but yeah,
maybe. Yeah,
we have had those.
and show what some of those savings are. And it might be
And
time
it's
to do
significant.
one, you know,
It's
that would be it.
significant.
That won't be a problem. I'll get that.
And then we had like an equipment replacement program we were gonna look into. Did we look into that at all?
So we have a program to handle all of our custodial equipment repair and replacement. We brought in a company called Nichols, and they went around over the summer, and we had every head custodian bring all of their custodial equipment into one place, and everything was looked over, what it needed, if it needed anything, if it could be fixed. And then they devised a plan that in some cases there are things that need to be replaced. In other cases, there were things that need to be maintained, whether that was a belt or a cord or this or that or the other. So that's happening. So that what the goal was that every building from a custodial standpoint would have the equipment they need for their building. Because it may not be the exact same thing at every building, just because of different furnishings and floorings. But I'm very satisfied with, that was actually an incredibly low cost
Yes.
to us.
And they did fix some day of when they were doing the inventory. Some of the quick fixes they took care of. They brought a whole team in. So, very good.
And is that a written plan? How do we decide? Do they know? I mean, they just visually inspect, is that the program?
It's people that are, they're experts at custodial equipment, so they come in and get hands-on.
And then what, is there a procedure for them to follow when they get that? And then how that gets to the money? to decide, you know, if it fits in the budget? Do we have a program for that, so we know what it is?
Well, we did budget for this year's preventive maintenance and replacement of custodial stuff. So yes, there was, I guess it's the typical requisition PO process that we used for that.
So this year was a little different because of starting new with Chris and I doing the budgeting. But we knew early on that was part of the plan, so we were able to set the funds aside for that. And being the first year, I can't speak to what the longer term plan is, but I'm expecting that we've got to continue, you know, this. We obviously have to continue to maintain it, equipment, and the goal would be to continue to replace things that are obsolete or out of date or end of life cycle. Probably using the same company as they.
So maybe part of my, I guess I'll just say confusion. When we're talking about the program, the board directs the conduct of a continuous program of inspection, maintenance, and rehabilitation for the preservation of buildings and equipment wherever possible and feasible. Maintenance shall be preventative. It sounds to me like you're referring to a document of a program where we have a program. You know, we do certain things on different timeframes and things like that. Are you wanting us
What,
to?
that's what I'm looking at, is the superintendent shall develop for the implementation by the custodial staff a maintenance program. But that's what I'm looking at, a maintenance program. What is the custodial staff using, implementing to make their decisions? Visual. I mean, like, do we wait until things break down and then replace them? Or do we say, hey, all of our, I don't know, John, y'all will know better than I do with this. I would know about windows, you know, like the seals on windows. You would, after so many years, you would pick a year, 20 years, you would go ahead and start replacing the seals on the windows, the vinyl, because it's going to be bad, you know, with preventative maintenance. I guess that's what I'm looking at. And do we have a program for that? I guess we just go around and say this needs to replace. I mean, we can anticipate, you know, when things are going to need to be replaced. I would think like carpet with lifespan carpet picks up so much stuff.
So really, a schedule
Yeah.
would be satisfactory then. Like a schedule of, I mean, we're saying program, it's not the procedures, it's identifying those things that need to occur and approximately when they should be checked.
Well, I guess so. I mean, what the custodial staff uses to decide it's a regular annual program of facility repair and conditioning. What is that? What I would say that if you put it down, it would save the facilities time also, knowing, and budgeting would be easier if you would know. And we also have long-range program of building modernization. I would think that has to do with lighting. We did that. We modernized the lighting. We wouldn't have to do that until we come up with something better than LED lights, right? The windows, I don't know what kind of glass we have in the windows. Are they up to the current par for modernization time? You know,
We're
or are
past
they,
life in so many areas.
right?
Our
Yeah.
budget and what we need to do are two different worlds. And so our program, in essence, has been, we inspect everything annually and we prioritize what the district, because if we're going simply based on life cycle, we have millions and millions of dollars worth of things that we need to do. But, so that's why we do the building inspections, we do all these things to establish what we're gonna put the limited amount of money we have each year for doing that. I mean, we could create a document and set of steps that we're gonna have no intention of following because we don't have the money for it. You would talk about modernizing, you know, equipment and facilities you know, we're past end of life on a lot of our HVAC things. Our windows are past life.
Report Elementary celebrates its 100th year anniversary this year.
Well, the way I see it is if that had been in place, because this is from 2013, if we would have had this in place, then when those 18 million ESSER dollar funds came in, we would have known, here's a list of things that we need to take care of in our schools that we didn't, that we could have.
Well,
Some of them at least we could have.
And
But
we
that's
put,
what I'm saying. If something happens like that again, if we have it, then we know. And you have something you can show the board and say, here's a list. Here are things that desperately need to be taken care of in our facilities.
You could spend $100 million downtown and still not bring it up to snow. Because you can't rebuild. I mean, the electric is so far gone, the HVAC is, I mean, we're still using cold duct and hot duct systems, even though we don't fire them by boilers in. But we still, the tunnels are still there and we're still diverting air through them. It's not by any means modernization.
We're still
It
using
does work.
screw in fuses.
So, well, yes, we are still using.
Well, that's not true of the high school though.
Right.
Well, hopefully the longevity of the high school will outlast any of these others because it's 50 years newer.
Well, and
Also-
there is a document that comes with when we take over the high school that has a suggested maintenance program for it.
Yes, and we have, I mean, and we do that, we follow it. The high school's an easy, really, because, I mean, it's 5 years old and it's not a question yet, but even those schools that were in the 60s, you know, or late 60s, early 70s, 50 years old, and their time is passing by, technology-wise, electrical-wise, HVAC. Those schools were built without any air conditioning.
I think, well, I haven't seen it, when OFCC does the master planning and the different phases, they address those type of issues, and there should be in there a report of what's beyond its useful life, what, you know, where it
There
is in
I
that
see-
schedule.
Yeah, I see. that.
Well, the district I come from, one of the caveats of doing the OFCC project back in 2008 was that this one elementary was decommissioned. Because the amount of money to get that up to where it needed to be far exceeded its worth. So that's why that project had an elementary school and a high school, was because we had to decommission an elementary school because of its almost unsurmountable amount of cost to get it to where it needed to be. And quite frankly, in a lot of cases like Groveport and some of our other schools, it's foundationally beyond some upgrades. You know, there are certain things you can't do for ADA. That you physically cannot change things, but it's grandfathered. The situation that we have is not unique to us by any stretch of the imagination. It's any state that has school buildings built off of local funds like that. It's just like,
Kathy, didn't you take all the OFCC books home at one point to look at all those?
Mhm.
I mean, that outlines electrical, plumbing, HVAC, asbestos. I mean, it outlines all the different things that need to be done in those buildings.
I guess I would assert that if we have a list of the items and inspection, the inspection schedule includes, you know, it's done in conjunction with this fire department or whatever, that would satisfy that particular policy element.
I think it would. I mean, just then you have it and it would satisfy that. I think. I mean, equipment replacement.
So we could put that list, some dates on there,
Take Chris's
and
list.
that'll be the planning program.
That sounds like a,
And then we don't have to rewrite this, right?
Right.
And the long range flow program of building modernization, should that be taken out? I mean, for the high school, I guess, but what do you modernization?
well, we still did modernization. You know, we did the bottle fillers and touchless faucets. We did the LED lighting, we did the bipolarization of the
Yeah, I guess
HVAC,
that's the lights, yeah.
vape detectors in some of our buildings. We have the, even though the product itself is more of a technology piece, we have those new line, those smart TVs in our building, which maintenance had to mount and run power for. So there are definitely things that we are doing systemically to modernize the district. Because I think that's the biggest thing for your general, John and Jane Doe voter with kids is my kid at this 80-year-old school getting the same education as, same quality education as so-and-so at the neighboring district that just opened up a brand new elementary? And the answer is yes. Because it's not about the quality of the walls or necessarily electric, it's the Chromebooks, it's the new line on, the smart board, it's the quality of the air, it's the quality of the light, it's those types of things that we are doing.
I would say also painting, and how you paint the inside of the building, put those things as long range, like they're, you might remember the word, but it's a word where if you bring nature in and you paint things with flowing and colors of nature, it's supposed to stimulate the kids. That's the
Industrial design.
modern theory, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of thing, if you put that kind of stuff in there, maybe that would be meeting that goal. Updated paint would be long range.
And I
They
think
decorate.
too, anything aesthetic, the aesthetic elements. But I think anything that we do also comes to the board. So, for approval when it's major, updates. So,
I mean, just having things like 5 years to look at this, so and sort of say, here we go, we got that program. But we're good on that.
I feel comfortable with
So, and then, okay, and then the next discussion item is the long, facilities, 7440 facilities security. And I think at the last meeting, we were gonna see if we could get some quotes for exterior doors for the elementaries or junior high, some of it.
So, well, it's the safe and secure entries. Safe and secure entries at all the buildings except the high school. So that's in process. We have met with our architect at several buildings.
And was construction material or just the architect? Was it just us and the
Just there. And we looked at a multitude of possibilities for the buildings. And they, I would say in October, I believe it's October, we're going to be meeting and looking at the estimated cost of these different possibilities. Because obviously we have triplets, in the elementaries and the middles. No,
And the middles are twins.
twins. Yeah. And some buildings have some difficulties based on what we really want for safe and secure entries. So that's in progress.
You're talking about panics for the exterior doors. That's what we were talking about last week. Secure panic that the high school, any door that opens, you said,
They all
the
go
alarm will
on.
go off, right?
no, what Chris is talking about is, you know how when you go in the high school, when you go in the front doors, you can't go into the commons without going into the office first. So that's what we're looking at, trying to replicate to some degree, is we have a secure entrance, so somebody has to check in the office before they can go into the general population portion of the building. Another element to this, though, is also I was just talking with the fire or the safety folks yesterday, and all of our buildings are assessed by the safety committee with the police departments and the fire department for safety considerations, and that's part of the report that they file with the state as well.
I thought at the last meeting we were talking about having secure the doors getting an estimate to see how much it would cost to have the doors at the different schools. Exterior door.
Oh, with the electronic locking,
Yes, so that if they.
the
all
centralized
open-
locks, centralized
Remember
locking.
that? Because you have that at all the high school, has all the doors, if somebody opens the door, you know that it's open. before it's shut.
Yeah.
We do have that at the high school.
But none of the elementary.
None of the elementaries have that.
That could be, depending on cost, be part of the safe and secure entrance.
No. Wouldn't be false.
Right.
It's completely.
It's super expensive.
Yeah, right. And that would be included.
But that would be the only way we could do it.
But all of them are cameras. They're just not,
Cans, but they're not security cans.
well,
They're not centrally locking.
yeah,
So-
they're not gonna lock, I mean, they lock behind you if you're going out, okay? But the, by fire code, they have to be accessible to get out of the building, okay? And they do maintain locked at all times. So someone would have to let you physically in that door.
Right, and that's what we were talking about before the incident that happened, you know, with, can somebody open up that door and get something in without anybody knowing? And you said at the high school, no, because an alarm will go off if the door is open. Is that correct? And that it will be on.
There is the high school, you can tell if the door is open. I
It's
don't,
not an alarm like that.
it's not an alarm system.
You just.
Like if you were going in the wrong part of the airport and you go through and buzz, we don't have that. But the system can show that if there are doors that are not secured at the, you know. So it can be monitored, you can see what's going on, but it's not an alarm that goes off if the doors are open.
Okay.
But that was, and I wasn't here for the planning of the high school, but I was told that was a very expensive part of the high school plan, and to do that after the fact, and you would have to basically run Cat6 cable to all of those and install the devices, and it, you know, it operates on software that
It has to be maintained. like
has to be maintained. I mean, it would be,
It's enormous. Again, my previous district, we had that at every building.
if you want us to get a
That wouldn't
quote,
be possible.
It's incredibly
It's not gonna
expensive.
be possible,
But-
for no reason.
It might be something that we look at when we're moving the buildings.
Right,
Because that's the time that you know, central locking, you would plan for that. So if there's other aspects of safety protocols, that's when we would want to identify those things. But retrofitting buildings that you're potentially replacing, I think between the elements that.
I think that's really all we talked about, with facility security last time.
Okay.
And you said in October you're gonna have, we did talk about metal detectors. So the next item would be the long-range master planning. Did talk about that with the board, and I don't know if they really came up with the decision still.
Well, I think there's agreement that we needed to delay everything until after the levy. So, you know, if there's any work to be done, we can check with the SAP and see if there's something that, you know, we can be working on in the meantime, but I don't think there's really anything that we can do right now, because their whole plan is based on the premise that you're building excitement because you're engaging the community right up to the point that you're going for a vote. And so to do that now, we'd lose that momentum and potentially lose people who would be engaged in the.
Well, I think we need to ask the board to come up with a definite yes, no, this is when we're doing it and that. Because we did talk about it, but we didn't have a yes, no, and I think we need to that committee needs to let Steve Hammond all know what we're doing, right?
So I think based on their time, I don't know, I'd have to go back and pull that, but I think we were looking at, if we were on the ballot in November, that we could start some work in like September, October, if I recall. To start putting the committee together and that. So I think we're looking at a September, October of 23. Yeah. Um, to begin that.
And Libby wanted, the community to start being engaged earlier.
Well, but again, I think going back to what Steve and Paul said, if you engage them now, you'll lose them later. There's not a lot for them to do unless we wanted to potentially do some surveys or something of that nature.
Yeah, because it typically is about a 4 to 6 week communication blast to get people to go vote that first Tuesday of month November.
So we were looking at a potential May, assuming we passed November. I think our next opportunity for, oh no, they wanted distance between the two. That's right. It would be the
My
following
recollection
November.
is correct, that there wasn't a vote or anything, but the general consensus was that we wouldn't want to be on the board twice in less than a year.
So
Well, I-
the following November.
I would think that maybe at the October meeting, that we have it on for a vote, that we make a decision, vote on it, and be done with it.
Meaning when the board is going to go to the ballot.
When we're gonna do it, yeah. And I mean, to start the plan of it, because we need to let them know it's not right leaving them hanging, and we need to just make a decision, right,
Okay.
and move forward. So maybe not at this meeting, because that's tomorrow, but at the October meeting, we put that on there. What would the recommendation of the facilities committee? I think as a group is to follow what Steve and Paul said.
Mhm.
I kind of would think Libby's right, respect her, to push it back a little bit farther of engaging the community a little sooner than what they said,
Well,
just to, maybe not the whole community as a whole, but certain parts of the community, get things going and get it ready to go to the community as a whole. How about that?
respectfully,
That's-
I think
that's meeting in the
we should,
middle.
we have our personal preferences, but I think you hire people because of their expertise. And they've been successful in these things using, a tried and true process. And I think, if we're spending $75,000 or whatever the amount was on them, we really should put the weight behind that trust.
Well,
But ultimately, it's the board's decision.
Yeah.
So,
But I'm saying if we're making a recommendation,
Right.
I think, that's true to a point. That they don't know our community like we do and haven't been through everything. And Libby knows this community pretty well. She's been around for a long time. So I think we kind of got to look at hers a little bit too. Me and her have had our differences on things, but I have a lot of respect for her knowledge of the district. And the last time we did it under the direction of a company that led
It's the direction of the board.
it didn't, huh?
It was the direction of the board that put the timeline together.
Did it, that
Yes.
wasn't the community and that messed up?
It was the direction, the board gave us basically 8 weeks to put a whole facilities plan together.
8 weeks is not enough.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just,
So October, we come to the board with a recommendation to
and let's,
the timeline for,
that recommendation will be to follow Steve Hammond and Paul, but maybe push it back to add maybe 3 weeks to the front end. That's having a little, right? Does that sound good?
Okay.
Is that fair with everybody? I don't know. Faith at the high school, subject number 5.
We did the drawings and highlighter last time. I think I sent electronically this copy to everybody. Did I
I
not?
don't know if I got it.
But
Probably.
basically, it shows the classroom design and the wings and the pods. You add those classes.
And it would be these two,
So it would add 12 classrooms to the high school.
6 each one.
I think when I talked to Paul last week, the high school is currently, I know it's over 2,000 students. And I mean, this to me seems like something that is like legitimate work of this group. And we are beyond capacity by quite a bit. We have an opportunity to add quite a bit of additional space. And I'm going to say in quotes, for a reasonable amount of money, because nothing's really reasonable right now with the cost of construction. But there's no flooring, there's no roofing, it's literally walls, doors, and furniture. And I would see this as something that if this committee wants to say, we recommend to the board to give direction to, engage architects and get quotes and things like this for this to be a project for next summer, I think, and then identify how to pay for it. Felicia?
I was getting there.
But, to
Put
me,
it in a jar.
that is a good project for this group to look at. This is something that we need. We're out of space. The high school continues to grow. This would be a reasonable way to gain quite a lot of classroom space within our existing facility, with minimal, maybe a few HVAC changes like ducting, but I think this.
It can't really get much more minimal than this.
It's literally just walling
It's
things
the
in.
most bang for the buck because we have the space. And it's, for the most part, it's unused. And getting 12 more classrooms
Huge.
that's a lot.
Yeah. Does the building have an occupancy rating, and will that exceed it if we do?
It does have an occupancy rating. I don't know what it is. And the building was originally built for, I've heard the two different quotes, either 1480 or 1540, and we're over 2000.
I think that, I thought it was 1550, but, I've got the information that we put out for the dedication.
But this design was actually done by VSWC back as part of the original design phase as a way to add classroom space. So, nothing would be official until we start to do it, but I'm going to assume that they wouldn't have drawn and given us an option of something that can't be supported by our occupancy limits.
Because it's more so about ingress and egress. And the intent of these spaces was to have kids there anyways. And the fact that we're walling it up doesn't really change it as long as they have ample emergency exit, ingress and egress.
Right. I think it's great, but yeah.
I really like the idea as well, and I like the idea of, getting the board to consider it and kind of bless it and recommend it for next summer, because that would give us time to get pieces in place, in addition to figuring out how we're going to pay for it. Architects get all the quotes and costs. But just as one of the sources of funding that comes to mind in talking about this, well, no, I hadn't thought of that, but that might work. I have to research it, but
Or is
Yeah,
that
we
all
still-
repair and maintenance?
it's, yeah,
Okay, okay.
pretty well limited, but some improvements. But no, what I was actually thinking of was, we have not even closed out that project yet with OFCC. It should be closed out, I would think, by next summer. There are funds left in there.
Hmm.
And
Almost like a
But
change
again-
order?
Change order funds probably?
no, I think it was just contingency,
Oh,
where things
contingency
came in
funds?
under budget and, yeah. So as soon as, we can't do anything with it until, the project is closed, which I can reach out and to OFCC
Oh, you're
and get a
closed.
new timeline. But it has to sit there until they officially close it. A year ago, June, no, this past June, I thought it was getting closed, and then they kind of went radio silent at the OFCC, and I haven't heard anything, so I will reach out and find out what that timeline is. I know we had talked about one of the other potential uses for that money was buying land for new buildings, but I see this as a more urgent need here, and maybe even what's left, perhaps modulars, also for overflow. But maybe by the next meeting, I can have an idea of how much money that is and a timeline of when we could get access to it.
Is this something we could bring up at tomorrow?
I think so.
I think so, too.
It's part of the facility report,
Okay,
this committee's report. I think so.
that'd be great.
You can keep that going.
That would really allow us to be very proactive about planning and being ready for that project and knowing what resources. Because there's a lot going on and a lot of great ideas, but the thinner we get spread, the harder it is to do all of these projects right. But if that's a priority, that can be a focus.
Good idea.
And maybe not that, maybe to even get us in the ballpark, we could try to figure out an estimate. Is it, I mean, VSWC drew those, not that we would necessarily use VSWC for the project, but because they drew it. Could they give us an estimate on a build-out cost based on, steel studs and drywall and doors and things like that? Is this 100,000? Is this $250,000? I don't know those things, but that might help our conversation if we know a kind of a ballpark what we thought it is.
They should be able to do that pretty easily. It's just sort of a price number, for.
Internal build-out.
Especially with all the things they're doing for us now, the clinic and everything else, they should have very big numbers on it.
Yeah, shouldn't be very
We,
hard.
we will have some extensive sprinkle.
Moving. Would you two tag team on that?
Absolutely.
All right, so item E, comments, announcements, and other business. Anybody have anything?
Just one thing I guess I would like to share. So this is a board subcommittee, or it's just a board committee. And so, the role of our committee, we talk about is defined as a board committee. In here, we're all equal members, right? And so, the consensus of the group and what we say, and it's not, and I don't know a better way to say this, but obviously Kathy's a board member and I'm superintendent, Felicia's treasurer. Regardless of our roles outside of here, everybody has an equal vote. We only have a voice as a committee when it's a majority of us to do this, just because this has to operate just like the board would operate. Kathy's the chair, she facilitates, and she's the one who officially reports back to the board by definition of a subcommittee. Now, the one thing, there's no public participation in the subcommittee, so people are welcome to come in and watch us and be here, but they're observers. So I think the last time we had a little bit of confusion, and I'm not criticizing, I'm not sure we knew exactly what to do or how to handle
New
it
territory.
when we had a community member guest in. So we could have a room full of people come in and watch us, but they're only observers because as a subcommittee, we're the group and we're doing the work, and it's a public meeting they can watch, but it's not, there's no public participation or interaction or anything like that. So I just thought
That's important.
it was important for us to know how we operate as a group. I mean, we're 3 or 4 meetings in now, and so it's important for us to know that just because I say, I want this, I'm not the superintendent here, I'm one of us as a committee member. So I just wanted, so everybody feels comfortable in our roles, and we can bring John to speed on that also.
On that thing, can we dispense with the pledge and that kind of stuff? Because we talked initially about making this a little less formal, or is that something you feel? is
That's what I'm
important, or-
That's, if we're allowed to do that.
Oh, yeah. I mean-
As a group.
My understanding is the only thing we have to have is the agenda,
Yeah,
and that's all we are required to have.
just to speed with them.
All right, that was it for me. Anybody else?
More?
Sorry.
Yeah,
Motion to adjourn?
we're all done with that comment. Another, we got it? Everybody's in agreement, right? Okay, so, well, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We just call all in favor.
Yep.
Aye.
Aye.
Great.
Right, moving.
Say that again?
The bus, the right is moving.
Oh, cool.
Again.
I know we're still testing,
Big time.
but that's how it looks.
That's, I've set,
Oh,
I was gonna
ask something I forgot.
I chose a couple kids. This is
Sure.
where this Billy kid lives.
Okay,
And it's not, that's the thing, is it's not working perfectly.
okay,
But it's, you can set your boundaries.
gotcha.
so ideally, if I were